Hello, my name is Annette Bulovic and I'm the historian behind Discovered Lights of Pennyback History, and we're back on location today following an interesting timeline into Canterbury's earliest European history. And today I'm going to be talking about a family that I actually regard as one of the most forgotten pioneering families here in Canterbury, and that is the MacKinnons, Malcolm, Mary and little Mary Ann MacKinnon, and they actually arrived here in Canterbury today 177 years ago. So I'm so pleased to have caught this story on such an important date. So let me tell you about the MacKinnons. They actually were part of a farming adventure by several landowners who believed that they owned a bit of the land on the Canterbury Plains. And so the MacKinnons were a part of a group that made up, I think it was 5 men, 2 women, and little Mary Ann, who is the first European child to come to step ashore onto Canterbury land. So little Mary Ann was quite important in that way, and I'm going to talk about her a bit later. But they were part of a farming group that they landed 177 years ago right by Lake Ellesmere, and they were the first to bring bullocks and farming equipment like ploughs onto the Canterbury Plains. And what they did, they landed on the 10th of April 1840, came across the plains heading to Pururangamutu, Dean's Bush, Riccarton Bush, which was about 55 acres of land at that time. So that was their focal point, again because of the timber probably would have attracted them to head to that area. And they settled after crossing that with their ploughs. And can you imagine crossing early Christchurch with all the marshes and water bogs? I can imagine those bullocks and the farm equipment would sink, and it probably was quite a mission to get that equipment across to Pururangamutu, but they actually did it. And Malcolm MacKinnon was the first pioneer to plough Canterbury Plains. They planted about 20 acres of wheat and 20 acres of potatoes, either one or the other altogether, but he was our first guy to actually break land on the Canterbury Plains, which is just awesome as well. After about 18 months, after very hard work, and you can imagine they were nearly in isolation because the nearest place to trade was with George Heppelman, who had a way station just south of here, west south of here, and but that place was so rough that they only really went there when they really had to. They much preferred to go to Akaroa and work with the way stations and everything like that. But not only were there was isolation, native rat attacked their crops, and also too they were expecting a boat full of supplies and other settlers, and that never arrived. And then they finally got word, because it was before the Treaty of Waitangi, because they made the deal with the Māori, that it was void. So you can imagine you can hear the snap of their spirit when that actually happened. So the other members of that party left, but the MacKinnons decided to stay and give it their best shot, and they literally ploughed on against the odds. And unfortunately, due to it's a weird misunderstanding, but there was a fire, and they actually thought that the Maoris had deliberately lit it to chase them off, and it actually did work. They actually left on foot, Riccarton, Pururangamutu. But it was later also discovered too that there was a fire lit at Lake Ellesmere, because it helps bring the eels up on the beach, which makes easy pickings, and the fire got out of control, and that was actually what happened. So the MacKinnons thought they were under attack, but most likely it was this fire that was mistakenly came across the plains at them. But off they went. They decided to go to Akaroa. That very first night that they walked, they reached Lake Forsyth, and they actually stayed in a wee cave there. The 3 of them only had 1 potato to eat between the 3 of them, so you can imagine it was quite a big feat as well. Another wee mystery that drives Chris absolutely crazy too is that when they reached the Avon, where the Christchurch Public Hospital now is, there must have been some sort of big hole in the river, and I think Malcolm MacKinnon had the thought of, well, I can't let my farming equipment fall in the wrong hands. Being at war and everything like that, this is what I'm thinking he felt. He put his farming equipment in this big hole in the Avon, and no one's ever found that equipment, and I'm sure it's probably dissolved into nothing right now. But I know every time we go around that part of Christchurch, Chris does stand there for a wee while and tries to figure out where this big hole could have been and where that farming equipment disappeared to. So they made it to Lake Forsyth. They had 2 of their bullocks with them, which they sold to the ship in Akaroa to those who wanted meat off the ships, and they lived in Akaroa to about 1852, and Malcolm actually served as a police constable, so he helped to keep Ikaroa safe. And then they came out to this beautiful piece of land, and this is actually Island Bay. And so this is where the MacKinnons came. It seems that they made a lot of cheese, so they obviously had a few animals out this way and ran a wee farm. And in near isolation, they ran this bit of land. And we're sitting here, we haven't got quite a date on what I'm sitting on, but we do know buildings that have had the stone foundation being dated around 1879. And the MacKinnons definitely weren't here at that time, but it helps us date this wee homestead that is still on the property. Behind me we've got the remains of the wool shed that was here, sheep dip as well, and the place is just littered with the most wonderful iron and brick wonders, and we're looking forward to coming back in a day when we have more time to have a poke around. So from 1852 the MacKinnons were here in near isolation. Little Marianne left here when she was 5 years old, and she actually went and had her education in Ikaroa and around the bay there, and she spent most of her teenage years as a female companion to other married ladies. You know, some of those women who had the money would have a wee companion as well, and then she got married, had her family, and unfortunately lost her husband quite early on and raised the family on her own. And she's actually buried at St Cuthbert's Anglican Church in Governor's Bay, and I've actually gone looking for her, but I've been unable to find her stone, but I certainly will keep looking for her, as she is the first European child to have stepped ashore here on the Canterbury Plains, so very important young lady as well. So thank you so much. I hope you found this wee interesting. I'm so glad we caught the date and time, 177 years ago. It's just absolutely wonderful. And thanks to the owners of this farm for letting us come in. We're on private property, but they were interested to learn about the MacKinnons as well. So we'll see you next time on our next location. Have a wonderful day.